Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in, well, a really fascinating methodology. We're pulling it directly from the source material of a language learning resource called EnglishVista. And this isn't your standard list of vocabulary words or grammar
No,
rules.
not at all. It's an important distinction to make right away. What we have here isn't really a curriculum. It's more of a blueprint for creating the ideal learning environment.
A blueprint, okay.
Yeah, the creators have basically decided that the biggest hurdle for people learning a new language isn't complexity, it's fear.
Exactly. So our mission today for this deep dive is to extract those core insights. How does English Vista deliberately minimize all those common stress points of learning? That feeling of being judged or slow or overwhelmed.
And instead, maximize psychological comfort, personalization.
Right. It feels like a targeted attempt to find a shortcut to conversational confidence.
Then that framing is foundational to their whole approach. They treat the learning environment, what we might call psychological safety, as just as vital as the lesson content itself.
So the environment is just as important as the grammar.
I'd say they believe it's more important, at least at first. Because if the learner's brain is locked in a state of stress, no amount of perfect instruction is going to stick. They're essentially treating the fear of failure as the primary, most stubborn barrier.
Okay, so let's unpack this and start right there. The most striking thing, right from the opening pages of the source material, is this relentless, deliberate effort to strip away anxiety.
That's where they start, yes. They're acutely aware of the emotional baggage people carry.
From what, bad school experiences?
Probably, yeah. So the creators, their names Sarah and Mark, they state their main goal is a channel that's warm and friendly. They're explicitly trying to be the opposite of a formal classroom, aiming for a place where the student does not feel nervous or judged.
But isn't that a little risky? If you prioritize emotional comfort over a strict, structured curriculum, won't students miss out on some of those foundational skills?
That's a really valid question, and I think it points to a common misunderstanding of how our brains process information when we're under pressure.
Okay.
The English Vista philosophy is based on this idea that competence cannot be built until confidence is secure.
Tell us more about the science behind that. What's actually happening in the brain when a learner feels stressed?
Well, when a student is nervous or feels judged, the brain activates the fight or flight response. You get a release of stress hormones like cortisol.
Right, cortisol.
And when cortisol spikes, the brain just prioritizes immediate survival. Crucially, the parts of the brain responsible for complex processing, for attention, for memory, like the hippocampus, they get impaired. Your brain is literally deciding that learning a new verb tense is less important than, scanning the room for a threat.
So if your brain is in survival mode, the lesson it won't stick.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good the teacher is. The fear is a physical cognitive block.
Precisely. You're pushing information against a closed door. So, recognizing this, the creators shift the environment from a high-pressure performance setting to a low-risk, secure space.
And they do this with that visualization you mentioned.
Yeah, the source material notes, they do it by visualizing the listener as a friend sitting at the table.
That's such a simple image, but it changes everything, doesn't it? It moves the dynamic from that formal, judgmental instructor-student thing to, well, a chat.
Mm-hmm. They say they want the channel to feel personal, not formal, not strict, just friendly and human.
And they ground this in their own memories, too.
They do. They connect this philosophy back to their personal experiences of learning other languages. They remember feeling embarrassed, sometimes slow, sometimes afraid to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So they validate that emotional hurdle right up front. They're saying, we get it, we know how that feels, and that validation in itself is a huge trust builder.
And to make that security feel immediate, they use a specific psychological tool, the intentional welcome.
Yes. Starting every single lesson with a warm welcome is a specific strategy. It's meant to immediately set the tone. It's a signal to the learner's brain, to the emotional center, that they are entering a safe, supportive space.
A relaxed, receptive state where you can actually learn something.
Exactly. They want the student to think, okay, I can relax now. I can learn without fear.
That makes the whole process of just showing up so much less draining.
It's the difference between forcing yourself into a high-anxiety situation versus stepping into a comfortable routine. The English Vista approach just prioritizes that receptive state above all else. They make sure the door to memory is open before they ever present a sentence.
So if the safe environment stops fear from blocking the door, the next question is, what's the key they give you to unlock fluency? If it's all comfortable, how do they make sure the learning is practical and actually sticks in the real world?
Right, and that moves us into their content methodology. They explicitly move away from general academic instruction. They focus on real-life speaking lessons. They imagine real situations that people face every day.
Like what kind of situations?
The examples they give are English at home, at work, with friends. And this one is critical, I think. English when tired or busy.
Oh, that's a key insight. That focus on when tired or busy, that's a huge acknowledgement of real-world constraints. Because when you're mentally tired, your ability to do complex things like remember some obscure grammar rule, it just plummets.
It absolutely does. Traditional teaching often aims for perfection, which demands a lot of cognitive energy. EnglishVista prioritizes reliability. If you're tired, you just need functional survival language. Simple, reliable phrases that don't take a lot of effort to retrieve.
They're shifting the focus from perfect conjugation to just functional output.
Maximizing functional output under duress, yeah.
And how does that contrast with what they reject? You mentioned that phrase, textbook English.
They make a very clear contrast. Their conversations are designed to be natural and easy. They are explicitly not textbook English or complicated expressions.
And textbook English is often, why not, too clean, too perfect.
It's artificially clean, exactly. It lacks the pauses, the repetitions, the little shortcuts that native speakers use all the time. By providing natural conversation, they're providing what we call low-friction input.
Low-friction input. Okay, let's define that for our listeners.
Low-friction input just means the listener spends minimal cognitive energy processing the delivery, the speed, the accent, the structure. If the pacing is comfortable, you aren't fighting to just catch the words. All your mental resources can focus on absorbing the actual patterns of the language.
You're learning more naturally then.
You're learning implicitly, yeah, instead of spending all your energy just trying to decode a delivery that's too fast or too complex.
So the goal has to be immediate utility. If the content is that simple and natural, it has to be immediately usable to stick.
That's the core of their model. They aim to provide real, everyday sentences that students can literally copy and use in your own life. And this links directly to memory. The goal is to use the language immediately, not just, saving it in a notebook where it gets forgotten.
Immediate application is the first rehearsal for your memory.
Exactly. And this all feeds directly back into their delivery style, the pacing. If the goal is low-friction input and high comprehension, then speed is absolutely paramount. They keep their speed natural, not too fast, not too slow, just comfortable. They're trying to match the listener's working memory buffer. If it's too fast, that buffer just overflows and the listener gets stressed and disconnects.
And their stated intention is just beautifully simple for the listener to follow along easily and understand every sentence without feeling lost.
Yeah, this belief is all wrapped up in their guiding idea. English becomes easy when you listen to it at ease. It's a deep investment in comfortable, continuous exposure rather than intense, stressful practice sessions.
It really is an effective application of cognitive theory, using ease and comfort as the ramp toward competence. All right, so let's look at the long-term vision. Beyond the technique, how do they define progress? How do they keep students motivated for the long haul?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the resource is really honest about the journey. They state very clearly that confidence does grow in small steps. This is so essential for sustainability. If you expect a huge leap, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment.
So they're defining success not as finishing, but as building a habit.
Precisely. Success is being present, practicing a little every day, and not giving up. It shifts the focus from some overwhelming final goal to an achievable daily action. It's an endurance mindset, not a sprint.
And that shared journey, that becomes the foundation for what they call the community.
It does. They frame the channel as more than a resource. It's a community. They use this really powerful unifying image. They imagine a room full of students from different countries, different backgrounds, different ages, different stories, all united by this one goal.
Wow, that must be incredibly grounding for someone learning on their own. The source material mentions students watching during breakfast, after work, before bed, or even on a bus. It takes that individual struggle and places it inside a vast collective effort.
And that sense of shared experience is reinforced by the personal commitment of the creators themselves. The source highlights that Sarah and Mark only plan, record, and edit the lessons themselves, putting a lot of love and time into it.
Right, human touch.
It's crucial for reinforcing that psychological safety we talked about.
Why is that personal commitment so important, though? Why not just outsource the editing to scale up faster?
Because the entire premise rests on trust and personalization.
Hmm.
If the learner feels the resource is a genuine human exchange, that friend at the table, rather than an anonymous product, the trust factor is so much higher. They even say how much they value the listener, giving them a small part of their day. It solidifies that two-way connection and makes you feel like your effort is seen.
So they're investing their own emotional capital to make sure the listener feels safe. And they weave that support into their growth, too.
They do. They encourage community support. Things like liking and subscribing aren't framed as just metrics for the channel. They're framed as a way of helping other students find these lessons too.
It transforms a simple click into an act of community stewardship.
Supporting the collective mission of making English accessible and keeping the whole environment polite and humane.
So what does this all mean when we put all the pieces together? We've seen that EnglishVista's approach is. It's a masterclass in psychological design. It uses deliberate stress reduction, personal connection, and this comfortable, low-friction input to unlock real progress.
Yeah, the overarching takeaway is a total shift in priority. They show that confidence is not the result of fluency. It is the prerequisite for fluency. You master the environment first, so the content actually has a chance to sink in.
And maybe the most important insight they offer is what they say you actually need to begin. They're very clear that you don't need perfect grammar or a big vocabulary to get started.
They simplify the barrier to entry to its absolute minimum. The only requirements they list for their community members are curiosity and a little courage.
That's a fundamentally human and, well, a highly achievable standard.
It really is.
And that's a profound thought that extends so far beyond just learning a language. So here's a provocative thought for you to carry with you after this deep dive. Consider how often in your own life, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being perfect holds you back from trying a new skill. Maybe the reason you stopped wasn't a knowledge gap, but simply the absence of a truly safe place to be slow and imperfect.
It really raises the question, if the only things required to start are curiosity and a little courage, how many massive skills have we delayed just because we didn't grant ourselves a friendly, unjudging table to sit at?
A perfect place to leave it. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.